whilst I welcome the government's continued commitment to providing military aid to Ukraine, I must tell ministers that their responsibilities to the Ukrainian people extend far beyond the battlefield. In the early months and weeks of the war, the government refused to follow the lead of our European friends and neighbours and waived visa requirements for refugees fleeing the onslaught. Now, Ukrainians who were promised safety and security in Britain are facing an uncertain future. Across the country, as many as 50,000 Ukrainians could be homeless in the new year as a result of ministers' woeful failure to bring forward additional support or even the most basic clarify ahead of the initial 6-month sponsorship coming to an end. I've had a very great privilege of meeting with Ukrainian refugees now living in my constituency and the families who have opened up their homes and hearts to them. But with the cost of living crisis hitting hard, I'm afraid that many of these sponsorships will simply not be sustainable without additional support. Indeed, some local authorities, fewer than a quarter of the hosts, are now in position to extend their guest stay beyond the first 6 months. Councils across the country are now warning that the situation is reaching breaking point. This was an entirely foreseeable crisis, and it's frankly unforgivable that ministers have yet to come forward with a credible plan for what happens when a refugee's initial 6-month stay comes to an end. But it's not too late to act, and so I urge the government to take whatever steps are necessary to ensure that in situations where the relationship between hosts and guests remain viable, that those sponsorships can continue. That must mean greatly increasing financial support for hosts, as the former Refugees Minister Lord Harrington recommended last month. The government also needs to acknowledge that the community sponsorship was only ever intended as a short-term solution to an immediate crisis. To give Ukrainian refugees the longer-term support they need, we need to ensure that financial and logistical support is in place for the entirety of the 3 years for which they receive permission to stay. We also need to do more to support Ukrainian refugees in finding homes of their own. Far too many Ukrainian refugees have been left to fend for themselves in the cruel and uncaring world of the private rented sector. Too many landlords have been allowed to refuse Ukrainian tenancies simply because of where they have come from. And like many millions of UK residents before them, refugees who have found work are finding that they simply cannot afford rip-off rents in the areas that they hope to call home. It's time for the government to equip local authorities with the financial resources and power that they need to act as guarantors for refugees searching for accommodation. Madam Deputy Speaker, members on the government's benches speak regularly on the pride they take in the support that the UK has offered Ukraine, as so adequately demonstrated here across this House. But I warn that their moral obligations will never be truly fulfilled unless they can guarantee that not a single refugee is left without a home this winter.